you're talking about a war horse now, and I mean that's a sort of a combination of two art forms. But I
Yeah,
also see that have you have used your puppets in opera as well.
that's right. Yes.
Mm.
Um, and I recently worked with, well, I worked on a couple of operas in the last couple of years, both very small scale. But yes, one was a contemporary opera about care, about it was all connected with the pandemic and how important caregivers are to people. And so for that, I created a puppet of an older woman who was at the end of her life, and the carer that was looking after her. And the carer was the singer, and the puppet uh, at that point died. And the reason that we used a puppet for that role is that we wanted her to literally um, disappear into the ether. So as her kind of soul spirit left her body, the puppet separated into parts. So you can do things, you can create metaphors that you can't with an actor. So sometimes a puppet is exactly what you need for that moment. And then the other opera I worked on recently was with a conservatoire here in West Yorkshire in Leeds. And they were all young opera singers. And we created a piece called The Light Princess, which was kind of also a new opera, but it was kind of sort of really for them to learn the repertoire. And it was about a princess who is cursed a little bit like Sleeping Beauty, but instead of sleeping, she floats until she can find her gravity. So that was a really fun thing to work on, training the young singers to also be puppeteers.
Amazing. And how do they work with these puppets? Is it for them easy because they're used to working with people, with
Yeah,
other
yeah, yeah.
singers? Yeah,
I
yeah.
think some people, you can really see some people have total instinct for that and other people not. Um, I would say sometimes actors and singers, their need or their training and their instinct is to put their own energy forward. And there's a thing that's slightly different about working with a puppet, which is about supporting the energy of something else and being able to channel your energy and your voice and your focus through something that's not you. So that's your vehicle to the audience. And that can be a little tricky, I think, for some people. Actually, dancers are great at it. They're used to making shapes with their bodies. But it's just about channeling what we all were able to do when we were a child, which is play and believe in something else, that it has a life as well.
But your puppets have moving parts. Is it this something that you specifically specialize in? Because I saw there you were working on things, and then it's specific that it has working parts.
Yes, I would say I've made many different types of puppets, and it really depends on the piece that it's being made for. But when you know what the needs of a production are, you might know that something needs to be able, like you might make a bird and it needs to be able to flap its wings, it needs to be able to look around, it needs, there might be certain actions that are important. And so then you do need to embed those mechanisms into the sculpture. But also sometimes the most beautiful puppets, and I would say in a theatre environment where you can really focus on something, the most beautiful puppets are actually incredibly simple. And it's just about that interplay between the sculpture and the movement of the puppeteer and the focus and the imagination of the audience. And to me, sometimes that can be the most eloquent, the most elegant puppet that's not really super techy, but just is allowed to have its time and its space. But the other part of it, the moving parts, is always for me a learning process. It's always a challenge. It's always like, oh no, I need to make this, do this. And it's really important. I can't fake it. It needs to be able to, have legs that walk properly or whatever. And
then it's Alison. Then it's Alison, the engineer.
Exactly. Then you have to drag out that engineering part. That's not my natural comfort zone, but you have to learn things. Yeah. And I learn from other puppeteers. We're a really wonderful sharing community, I would say. I learn from other puppeteers who are more geeky than me.
Oh, okay.
I can make that work. And so learn things and adapt them and make them your own. I'm actually just going to next week be teaching a course in Newcastle at the Puppet Festival there in puppet making. So we'll be making a tabletop puppet. And so part of that is the sculpting, but then there's a part of it is teaching certain kind of jointing, so mechanisms. So that'll be really interesting to show people how to make those things.
Yeah.